So we were at Turning Point USA's High School Leadership Summit. Thank you, Charlie and Candace, for taking the time to speak with us today.
It is our pleasure.
Absolutely.
I have more Twitter followers at this moment than
At
Candace
this moment,
Owens.
this will be the last.
Horse race right now. So I wanted to start off with something that you said last night at the dinner. You were incredibly optimistic. You talked about how you started with no connections. There was like no opportunity, but you pulled yourself up by the bootstraps, got to work, and you just did what you needed to do to spread conservative ideas. That's an optimism I feel that's hard to maintain. What was something that both of you have had to do to remind yourself of that optimism in the face of adversity?
You want to take it first?
Well, look, there are tons of moments. People don't know this, but early on, there were a lot of no's that we dealt with. Charlie took me around to, I think, every Fox News producer. He took me around to pretty much every Republican and said, this girl's going to be big. Have her on your show. This girl's going to be big. Hear about her ideas. And everyone was just kind of like, you think you can move the black vote? And then it was, a kind no. All of these people are now our good friends now. But I think that's sort of the lesson in life, right? The lesson in life is it's not how many times you fail, it's how many times you get back up. You had Mark Cuban here speaking yesterday saying that it only takes one time for something to go right. And I've always tried to maintain that perspective because, look, life's hard. You get knocked down a lot. But I was obviously very inspired by Charlie and his story and his journey. And I was fortunate that things took off for me pretty quickly. But I think we just have focus and tenacity. And we think we're doing the most necessary work in the country right now. So how can you give up when you feel like you're saving Western civilization?
And it's not always easy, but it is definitely worth it. There's the enemy is relentless to their pathological obsession to try to destroy conservatives, this president, and any sort of ally that is effective that is adjacent to it. Henceforth, Candace, Turning Point, myself, Don Jr. But they're widely underestimating how much we care about the fight, and that we're not just going to give up because there's a couple of reporters that come after us. There are a couple stories here and there. This is just the very beginning of something that will, God willing, save Western civilization, as Candace and I talk about. So it's bigger than just America. We're talking about saving the free world. And this is the ideas that have formed the West are directly under assault in their universities. They're on referendum in our ballots, and they're being defended by our president. And our organization is honored to be leading that charge in the most important demographic.
That's a great way to put it. Like, it's really profound to say, how can you not be energetic when you're saving Western civilization? I just love that. This conference is kind of unprecedented in the sense that it actually teaches high school students how to go into a college culture that's radically different and prepare themselves, how they need to comport themselves. And there's a lot of good lessons being taught on conservative messages and ideas. But what is one other idea that you want to give to students here of how to comport themselves in their daily lives, how they can be better selves?
That's a great question. So I would start by saying the one thing that I want them to walk away from this conference and feel is that they're not alone. It's so important that they feel that they aren't alone. And in a similar vein, we did the first ever Black influencer retreat out in Arizona. And the number one thing that we heard from all of these Black YouTubers who have been putting out conservative ideas is they thought they were alone. Right? And when you go to a liberal campus and a liberal university and you have groups dedicated with names like Students Against White Supremacy who shout down at you because you're wearing a shirt that says free markets and capitalism, you can start to wonder, A, if you're going crazy, or B, if you're alone. And to inspire them before they even get to that, to inspire them to understand that the emotion that you feel in that room, the excitement that you feel in that room, and that sense of camaraderie that you feel in that room is the number one thing that I would like for them to take away from this conference.
And the left, they're strategic. They tried to put forth the banishment of isolation to young people. They want people to feel alone. And for mission-driven individuals like Candace and I, even we get fired up by being around these high school students. And so this is a beautiful example of the market. Not only are these students getting something out of it, but we're getting something out of this too. And that needs to be, we're transacting value here. That, of course, it's about the students. I'm not saying we do this for us. If some fake news guy will write, "Oh, Charlie Kirk does this just for himself," right? But the speakers are speaking here. They come off. They say, oh, my goodness, this gave me hope for America.
100%. I always say it recharges the batteries. We go out there, we take a bunch of hits every day. Then we come to a conference like this, and we remember why we do it. We remember and we see those kids that are fired up and that understand that their future is on the line. And it gives me so much encouragement. It's like I can take 25,000 punches in the face every day. And if I can just have one of these events, once a year even would be amazing. And we get to do it multiple times a year.
I want to ask you about a deeper question, too, because this is about a current event. One of the things that the left has been trying to discuss, and at least in the case of Peter Strzok and law enforcement, is the difference between bias and bias activity. And he made that dichotomy in his testimony to the House. And the left literally applauded that. And one of the things I find inconsistent in Candace, it's one of those things you taught me about how to analyze, is in the case of 2015 with Eric Holder's DOJ, you had racial bias found in the emails of police officers, and those are law enforcement officers as well. So I'm wondering about to understand more about our political circumstances so that college students are better prepared of how to deal with claims of bias from the left. Do you think that the Peter Strzok defense is something that is a wholesale application to all law enforcement? Would that have applied in Ferguson?
Well, no, and here's the distinction and the difference. We don't have text messages from police officers in Ferguson that say, oh no, I'm going to stop that black person from living. They dug and dug and dug and found what they call to be insensitive racial bias on a very subjective matter. An objective eye could look at Peter Strzok's text messages to his lover bird that he did not disclose through any sort of governmental HR disclosures and say, hold on a second. This guy did something about this. He said, no, we're going to stop it. If you're going to deny the deep state exists, don't talk like a deep state agent. Yeah. And not to mention, we now know about the dossier that was funded by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign, signed off upon by a FISA court judge that is highly questionable. You're trying to tell me the president didn't know about that, and Podesta didn't know about that, and all these guys didn't know about it, and Strzok was saying that? That's the distinction and the difference. And so, Candace, I'll let you take the other
There
part.
couldn't be anything more incriminating than him saying that they were going to stop it. I mean, it's black and white. And look, the left will always defend their own. It doesn't matter what they say. We've seen them defend everything. We've seen them defend MS-13. We see them defend pedophilia this week, right? So, I mean, this is pretty standard for the left. This is what they do. Because to them, they represent it's tribal. It's tribal instincts. Defend them no matter what. And it's unfortunate to see this. I think it's going to be really hard for Americans to have faith again in the intelligence community if justice is not served.
Look, we should question our intelligence community. And skepticism is a healthy component of a free and vibrant republic. The intelligence to go into Iraq was wrong. The intelligence about the Shah in Iran was wrong. The intelligence about 9/11 was wrong. The intelligence about the assassination of JFK is questionable at best. We should question our intelligence agencies. There should not be intelligence agencies that are held up on a high standard, like, oh, we can't audit them, we can't cross-examine them. There will be bias because human beings are flawed by nature. And you give them too much power without oversight, without audits, and without questioning, they're going to start to have that bias turn into action.
And that becomes Peter Strzok.
Yeah. I believe our founders also wanted us to have a healthy skepticism about the way our government works,
of
right?
course.
How they're collecting information, completely. They wanted us to be able to confidently stand before our government and say, what are you doing and why are you doing it? And that actually gets to another question I wanted to ask you both too, is that I think we can agree that this president has undergone an unprecedented level of attacks from the establishment on both parties. And one of the things has to do with Russia and how he's been criticized because he wants to open up diplomatic relations with Russia. And the last
Russia.
Yeah, Russia. The last time you saw this kind of agreement from members of both political parties of the establishment was the vote in Iraq.
Which was the worst foreign policy decision since the Vietnam War.
100%.
And now they're advocating the same sort of thing about Russia. Do you think that establishment point of view is something that is shared among the American people, particularly young people who weren't even born in the Cold War era?
3 points that I'll make about Russia, the whole Russian thing first and foremost. First of all, Russia's a very weak country, and people don't realize this. Their GDP is the combined size of Bulgaria, Netherlands, and Denmark. They're not a very rich country. They're solely dependent on natural resources. They have a declining population. They have anti-immigration policies, which we don't support. We support legal immigration. They're very, very closed door on immigration. They don't have an entrepreneurial underbase. And they have a lot of division within the country. They're only a country of 110 million people. Indonesia has more people than they do. Brazil has more people than they do. We have 3 times their population. Also, this president has been historically tough on Russia. Forget the Helsinki summit, which, by the way, I actually applaud a lot of what he did in that summit, unifying in support of Israel, unifying against Iran, and unifying against North Korea. No one talks about the positives of using Russia for all that. And by the way, we've always had a double-edged sword with Russia. We partnered with Russia to go against the Nazis. We partnered with Russia to go against other geopolitical threats before. So this idea that Russia should always be this huge adversary, when appropriate, we can use them for certain geopolitical initiatives. But let's talk how Trump has been tough on Russia, if that's really what we should do, which I don't know if that's what we should do. 200 Russians were killed in Syria airstrikes. 200 Russians were killed. Trump twice launched Tomahawk missiles in Syria in defiance of Putin's direct demands and in defiance of the Assad regime. Record amount of sanctions against Russia. Trump has kicked out a record amount of Russian nationals, closed a record amount of Russian consulates here in the country. He refuses to acknowledge the illegal annexation of Crimea. Trump has armed the people of Ukraine in direct defiance of Putin's demands. Trump has given more money to NATO. NATO is now $45 billion richer, thanks to President Trump. Putin hates NATO. He hates NATO. Donald Trump is tougher on Russia in every single policy decision, yet they call him bought and paid for by the Kremlin.
Let's call this what this actually is. This is just their excuse for why Hillary lost. This is like the longest running excuse for why Hillary Clinton lost. Like, we could sit here and go tit for tat and talk about every single thing that he's done against Russia, which, as Charlie indicated, has been everything he's done has. Yeah, no, but you're right. And if we were having a logical debate about Russia, all of that information would be good. But this is illogical. This is an illogical, emotional response to people that can't come to terms with losing. People that can't come to terms with the fact that the establishment does not get to decide how the American people vote. Right, so it's the longest running excuse that's meant to drum up a bunch of fear in America, and to ride that fear into midterms.
It's really a facts don't care about your feelings
Right.
moment right now. But I appreciate you for taking that time to answer those questions. But I wanted to.
I don't know if we answered it, but the point is.
I said something.
Those were a lot of points. But and if somebody were to make a point like that, say on Twitter, right, where you both have planted yourself like trees in the face of people coming back at you. But there are some young people that look to certain conservative leaders and they have the mindset of they can do no wrong, right? I think we need to analyze good ideas like you have been teaching everybody to say this is good, this is bad, we need to support the good. How do you counteract the idea that young people think, in some cases, that there are some conservatives that can do no wrong?
It's wrong, and it's not a good idea to think that nobody can do wrong. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because so many times I'll get students that come up to me that have disagreements with me, and they say, I don't know if I agree with the last thing you tweeted. I go, you should not agree with everything that I tweet, otherwise you would be Candace Owens, and one Candace Owens is enough. We don't need 2 Candace Owenses walking around here. The world will melt. And I say, challenge those ideas, and they go, well, what if I disagree with you on something, and a person comes up to us on campus and asks if I agree? I go, tell them you disagree with me. That's the point of this. You've seen me go after conservatives on my own Twitter feed. If I have a disagreement with them, we are not trying to destroy a monolith on the left to recreate one on the right. I say that all the time, and it's so important that people understand. Charlie and I have disagreements. We don't agree on everything. I don't agree with every single thing that Trump does. And if you did disagree with every single thing that he did, you wouldn't be an individual. So that, I think, is the main differentiator between the left and the right, is that we welcome disagreement. We welcome healthy debate. We saw that between Charlie and Mark Cuban yesterday on stage, and it was so refreshing to see. You can peacefully disagree.
2 points. Number one, point to me another conservative conference where you have that kind of discussion happen civilly. It doesn't happen. CPAC doesn't have it. No, I love CPAC, by the way. Love CPAC. They treat us very well. We treat them well. But that sort of platform doesn't happen. So that's a difference. But here's the one thing I'll say. I have very little sympathy for the never Trump and the anti-Trump people, not because of their necessarily the position that they're coming from trying to be intellectually honest, even though I don't think they're always being, but it's the volume of which that they say what they say. And so if you're going to say certain things against the president, that's perfectly fine, but maybe those things should be better said privately, because we are a team. If you believe in freedom and liberty and American exceptionalism, you should treat each other like allies and not try to win points against people on the left and say, oh my goodness, I want to look so nice in the eyes of other people, because those people are all sorts of allies.
Right, so the other side of that is saying, like, if you consider yourself on our team and an ally, to me, a silly critique is, I don't like that President Trump tweets. Right, that seems incredibly petty, like in the scheme of things, in the scheme of the fact that this man arrived and to me represents the last stand of Western civilization. I truly believe that if Hillary Clinton had won, we would have lost this country, right? And you're upset because he tweets.
Thank you for all that. My last question is, what do you think is the next step for high school students after they leave here?
Go to war. Fight this cultural war.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, start Turning Point chapters. These students are the future. It's the largest ever high school conservative leadership event, and this is just the very beginning for Turning Point USA. And these students are going to be leaders for a lifetime, and we can't wait to continue to empower them. And the great Kyle Kashuv has been a great leader in helping putting this together. This is just the very beginning. People better buckle up because there's some very, very exciting things happening.
So one of the things I think you guys excellently teach young students about is how to deal and prepare for the attacks on the left. But I think I've seen on the rise recently, and unfortunately with you, Charlie, I've seen it happen to you, is attacks from your supposed allies, from people on the right. And people don't really expect those. I certainly wouldn't expect it as a conservative for another conservative to attack me. So how would you best advise young students to prepare for that? And I see it, sometimes it comes from a position of jealousy, I think. Sometimes it's a position from they want to do what you're doing, so it's, competition maybe gone too far. How would you advise to deal against that?
So what I would say is that the first thing is with class, with dignity, and with respect, and with the perspective that there's the big picture perspective, which is that our enemies are on the left, right? So all of this is petty and immature. The other thing is to realize that it's normal. It's the human condition, and it's something that I was listening to an old Drake album the other day, and he really spoke about how as he sort of arrived on the scene and exploded onto the scene, the people that he once looked up to, he says a line, "My idols became my rivals." And he starts talking about how that happens even in sports, for Allen Iverson, Michael Jordan. So it's a natural part of the human condition. We try not to take it too seriously, and we hope that those people will see us as their allies and really refocus their attention on who the real enemy is.
And you can do a lot more with honey than vinegar in the world, and we just want to be a force for building and not for destroying or destruction. Everything Candace and I do, we wake up every single day and say, how can we build? How can we do better? Typically, people that are on the left, they seek to destroy. And I hope that allies on the right, they wake up every day and say, how can I build something, not how can I ruin something?
And then my last question for the two of you, out of all the issues you raise at these conferences with young people, what's one issue that you think maybe isn't as popular among the young students, one political issue that you think maybe should be a hot button issue for them that you wish they would pay more attention to?
That's a great question. I feel like I could answer it, but it's more personal.
Okay, maybe for you.
I just wish we spoke a lot more about the welfare programs, like just welfare in general is something that I think that we should be speaking more about and educating about.
One thing I just wish we could get back to is talking about the existence and the meaning of God in our culture.
Love it. God is real.
God is real, and I feel as if the secularization of our country is directly correlated with the rise of socialism in America.
Absolutely.
Those are two great points. Thank you guys again. We really appreciate this.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.